Greetings Zimbabwe and welcome to Power Talk. My name is Sean Moyo and today on the program we host a very prominent Zimbabwean and politician. He needs no introduction really, but for the sake of procedure I will introduce him. He's Douglas Mwonzora. He's a lawyer and the president of the MDC. Mr. Mwonzora, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you very much, Sean, and I want to greet the people of Zimbabwe. I know that this season is very, very cold, and unfortunately there appears to be a bug that is going around, yes. And it seems to be fatal.
Right.
And I just want to urge Zimbabweans to take extra caution and protect themselves.
Right. Do you think it's a new version of COVID, or perhaps it could be something totally different?
I know of 3 people who have lost their lives, right, because of that bug, right, or associated with that bug. And these were originally very strong people, apparently very strong people. Yes. It is there. Some people are calling it influenza, but yes, it is resemblances to COVID.
Right. Yes. And there's a rumor that's going around. Of course, I think partly it's been fed by the president surgeon to Russia, where he said to have uttered some words uncomfortable towards Zambia. So some are alleging that America had violence in Ukraine. So when the war started with Russia, they then moved them to Africa. And so one of the conspiracies is that one of the violence may have been used to create something that was sprayed over Zimbabwe. Do you buy into those kind of things?
Well, and, compared to the population of Zimbabwe,
yes,
the death toll does not resemble warfare.
Right.
It looks like this is a natural. I don't think that the Americans will be so cruel as to harm every Zimbabwean on the basis of what President Mnangagwa has uttered. Just as an example, why harm Tendai Biti, Love Momadugu, Nelson Chamisa over what Mnangagwa has said? And what President Mnangagwa said on that day is not representative of the people of Zimbabwe. In fact, we as the MDC, we are of the opinion that the people of Zambia and the people of Zimbabwe are one. We share the same heritage, we share the same history. We were both colonized. And after colonization, we went through dictatorship by the independence government, the nationalist government. We had an opposition that fought hard to win. Fortunately, in Zambia, they have won. But their main opposition came from the labor movement. The first main opposition came from the labor movement. And we came from the labor movement as well. Zambian people want quality education, want quality health, want to leave a legacy for their children. Zimbabwean people want the same. So we as Zambians and Zimbabweans must unite, must never allow our leaders to divide us.
Right. But getting straight into it, Mr. Mwonzora, where does the MDC stand currently in Zimbabwe's political economy? I know a lot of people have said the MDC is dead and buried, and this is under your leadership. What would you like to say to Zimbabwe about that?
Oh, thank you very much. The MDC now is standing on solid grounds. It has got everything right, and history will tell that MDC or has recorded that the MDC was the only party that has remained consistent. It is the only opposition party right now which has held congresses, which elects its people democratically. After the demise of Morgan Tsvangirai, we had a period of turmoil, and in 2020 we had our Congress, our extraordinary Congress, where our leader was elected democratically. 2 years later, our main Congress was due. We held our main Congress, we elected the leadership, we have our structures, and we did warn Zimbabweans that there was the problem of delimitation. We were derided. In fact, we were misrepresented. People said it was a ploy by the MDC to delay elections, to help President Mnangagwa, etc. And the MDC did warn that going into this election, to use the words that we used, was an act of foolish bravery. And that the delimitation problem went beyond the election. It would affect political parties. The delimitation affected the stability of ZANU-PF in the primary elections. But the difference is that the ZANU-PF has coercive mechanisms.
Right.
It uses state apparatus.
Right.
It did affect the candidate selection within the Triple C. That's why they had this strategic ambiguity. It is because one of the main reasons is that they were not sure of the boundaries themselves. Right. And they found themselves with overlapping boundaries. Yes. That's why you had the Tendai BT Makam problem. It was all the effect of delimitation. And we warned that after delimitation, the parties that participated in the election in a serious way were going to disintegrate, and we have seen that happening. So the MDC stands on solid ground. It is preparing for 2028 elections. It has started a program that is called the 3R program, Reset, Restart, and Recover All. And this program is going on very, very well. We have perfected our ideology. We have built synergies with other political parties around the world. That is why we were invited to the policy conference of the Labour Party in Liverpool last year. And we have been invited again this year. We are building solidarity with other organizations. Back at home, we are part of the group of opposition parties that has formed the National Electoral Reform Agenda, whose main task is to make sure that we have electoral reforms in this country. Electoral reforms that in short guarantee the secrecy of the vote, the security of the vote, and the security of the voter. Right now we are at our headquarters in the Morgan Tsvangirai house. We are going to start another program. I think on Sunday I will be in Harare West meeting the people there, and week after we will be in Bulawayo. We are on very, very solid ground, and objectively speaking, MDC is the most stable political party right now as we speak. Yes, we are not in parliament because, let's face it, we were punished by ZEC for fighting delimitation. We did not participate in the presidential election. Other people participated in the presidential election. The fact of the matter shown is that no leader of the opposition is occupying State House. So you may have missed it by a centimeter. I may have missed it by a mile, but a miss is a miss. We are, as the MDC, we called for dialogue, national dialogue. Again, we were derided. So right now we see civil society is talking about delimitation now. Political parties who did not want dialogue are now talking about dialogue. And this is what we suggested. So we remain, and I'm sure this is a fair claim, we remain the flag bearer of the Zimbabwean politics. Listen to the MDC and you will have a rough idea, a good rough idea of what the future holds for this country.
But you spoke about the last two congresses that your party held, and you say they were free and fair. But the honest truth is, even now, one of the top contenders then, Dr. Kupe, said it was not anywhere near that, including the other contenders, Engineer Muzuri, as well as, I can't remember the other one. They say it wasn't free and fair. And also, we saw videos of violence being exerted on Dr. Kupe. She was slapped right on camera. And so, would that then represent a free and fair Congress by your standards?
You must remember that Dr. Kupe at that point in time was the president. Mm-hmm. And what you may not have seen during that Congress is that when they saw that I was winning, they suspended me right in the middle of Congress from the post of Secretary General. The people who voted, but I don't condone what that youthful person did to Dr. Kupe. But you must also go back in your video on what the behavior of Dr. Kupe on that night was. It was unpresidential.
But can it justify violence on a woman?
Certainly not. Certainly not. We don't condone that, Sean. But Dr. Kupe tried to grab the ballot boxes when she thought that she was not going to win. And the person who slapped Dr. Kupe I immediately, upon assuming leadership, suspended him from the party, and he was brought before a disciplinary committee. He was expelled from the party. Ironically, Sean, this person is now in the same party with Dr. Kupe. So the fact that there was that incident does not take away the freeness and the fairness of the vote. In fact, Dr. Kupe was walking away from the democratic process when that happened. It did not happen before. Then Engineer Mzuri and Senator Komichi, again, what would losers say? This is the Zimbabwean phenomenon. You lose an election, you want to blame the winner.
I like the part, sorry to interject, I like the part where you say it's a Zimbabwean phenomenon that losers tend to always reject results. But also, your tactics in first of all winning the first Congress, as well as retaining the presidency in the next Congress, seems also to have this Zimbabwean strongman approach whereby the leader is excessively using probably strong in tactics. Some people have accused you of being chichizano-zano, not that you are ZANU-PF, but the Wuzanu. People seem to think everyone in Zimbabwe is infected with that.
No, certainly not. The MDC election is different. In the Congress is different because it is not conducted by me as president. It is conducted by an independent electoral management board, which is chaired by the Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions. And at that point in time, it was chaired by this Deputy Secretary General of the Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions, Advocate Mashingwe. So you have absolutely no role to play as a candidate. I was a candidate. Of course, I did my homework, and I told my comrades then to say that in the next election I would probably win because I had a good approval rating by the MDC. And I tried to have dialogue with them, tried to have a bargain with them. In fact, I offered both Dr. Kupe and Engineer Mzuri that run as my running mates, because what is on the ground is that I'm going to win. The MDC, let's face it, the MDC people like my type of politics, like the fact that I give them an ear, like the fact that I am not violent at all. And you hear people say we lost because, for example, in the last Congress, what violence was meted against Mr. Komichi? In fact, Mr. Komichi chaired the meeting of where I was nominated. He was the chairperson, and he declared me duly nominated himself as national chairman. And he went, my competitors had treated me. But let's face it, I don't think those people who were contesting with me at that point in time would beat me. I don't think they would. Given my history within the MDC, I had been its Secretary General, and that is a big advantage. You have all the structures with you. You are able to have all the records with you. That's a natural advantage of being Secretary General. I had been a chairperson of COPAC. I had been the spokesperson of the MDC. I had been in the ZCTU. And I had been the legal advisor of the Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions, handpicked by Morgan Tsvangirai himself from the University of Zimbabwe. So you can see the history was rich. What were my opponents in distinction in the eyes of the opposition? Not very consistent people. Dr. Kupe had at one point in time gone out, formed an outfit, came back. As a result of the judgment, I remained in the party. Morgan Komichi had not won the election, and he was then picked by Tsvangirai. And then Engineer Mzuri lost election to Nelson Chamisa in 2011, did not even go for election in 2014, was handpicked by Morgan Tsvangirai. On the other hand, I have never held an a position in MDC outside an election. I was elected spokesperson 1 week after I was released from prison in 2011. I was elected Secretary General. I beat Nelson Chamisa, and he's not an easy person to beat, you know. And I beat him by 859 votes.
If I may come in that, Mr. President, there's been rumor or talk about that particular election that perhaps the outcome was not necessarily the reflection of what Congress wanted, but that it was a managed outcome where the leader then, the later Dr. Tsvangirai, preferred someone other than Chamisa because it seems he may have seen him as other, maybe probably overly ambitious and being too quick to rise.
Then why?
So some say you may not necessarily have won, but it was a managed outcome.
Then why did Tsvangirai appoint Chamisa vice president? If he did not want him to be in leadership, that is a complete lie. The fact of the matter is that during the nomination process, the very first nomination process, it was Harare province. I beat Chamisa by 700 votes to 100.
In Harare province?
In Harare province, 700 votes to 100 on that election. It was nullified. It was nullified in my absence, and it was nullified when I was now facing criminal charges in Rusape. There was this case, the 2011 case. It was brought forward in 2014 during nomination, and there was a strange coincidence between the state and my opponents within the party. And why did the state then decide to prosecute me, bring 24 witnesses against me during nomination? And the nomination that then happened, I was not present. I was in court. And I then went for only one nomination in Manicaland province. And at that nomination, I was overwhelmingly voted for. And when we then went to Congress, Mr. Chamisa was the organizing secretary of the party, with all the structures of the party, with all the advantages. And he lost by 859 votes. Those votes could not have been manufactured by Tsvangirai and so on. The fact of the matter is that I got my act right, and the people in the MDC had confidence in me. Remember, we were coming from crafting the constitution. This was about a year after I, from the MDC, had delivered a national constitution. And in the MDC, we had employed during COPAC about 300 people into COPAC. Right. Some people had been ministers, employed no one when they were ministers, and all those factors came into play. But as I said, this is a Zimbabwean phenomenon. Douglas Mwonzora never wins, he gets helped. Even when I win court cases, Sean, I win court cases against people I taught at university. And when I win, they say, no, he has been helped by the judges. I beat my own student in a courtroom, and somehow, there is an explanation on why I won. I don't know when Zimbabweans will get to know that I do have some competence, you know.
Right. Speaking of your victory over Chamisa once more, what do you think actually made you win against him? Because he's a massively popular person. In the last election alone, the national election, he got in nearly 2 million votes. The previous election, again, he got about 2 million votes. He's very, very popular. But why do you think you actually won against him at that particular point in time?
Because I was better. Because I'm a better candidate, actually. And you know, as I said, I have never contested with Nelson Chamisa in a national election and lost. I've never contested for presidential election, remember? And when you compare me to a person who has gone into the presidential election, you are comparing oranges and bananas, because I have not contested there and lost. We contested together at the same level in the party, and I won by more than 70% of the vote. It was a big win. I won because, one, the people in the MDC like someone who sticks to the rules, who keeps the constitution, not somebody who cuts corners. They don't like that. Number two, they want somebody with a solid achievement, not what they say, but what they see. And there I was. I had done the constitution of the MDC. I had done well as the spokesperson of the MDC. I had not rode roughshod over anybody in the MDC. And my rise was on the merit. And contrary to what people say that I'm not found a member of the MDC, It is not true. I was the legal advisor of the Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions, and when the MDC was formed, we were doing the constitution with Maduku,
right.
And Morgan Tsvangirai told me and Maduku not to contest for the 2000 elections because he wanted us to write a constitution that will be used after the presidential election in 2002. So we were men on a mission. We produced that constitution with Maduku. It had 12 chapters. Professor Maduku wrote 7 chapters. I wrote 5 chapters. And people in the MDC knew this. And they wanted a Secretary General who was loyal to the cause, a Secretary General who does not cut corners. And they found favor in me.
But talking about your participation in a national election, the last election last year, you withdrew basically at the 11th hour. And ZEC said you could not withdraw at that point because the ballots had been printed already. So the timeline at which you withdrew was not acceptable by their requirements. So your name was on the ballot, and you got about 28,000 votes from that election. So does that not signal your participation in a national election? Why would that not be participation?
The law says that I can withdraw 21 days before the election. Mm-hmm. And the law also says that ballots cannot be printed when there is a case in court involving a presidential candidate. I withdrew 21 days before the election. And I did not make a secret of it. I held a press conference and I advised the world that I was moving out of this election. Mm-hmm. And I told people to boycott this election. And by the way, Sean, 2,600,000 people who were eligible voters did not vote in this election. They heeded our call. And of course, they will not be recorded as votes. So they heeded our call. And I had told people I am out of this race, I am not in this election, and so on. Some people went and voted anyway, knowing that the vote wouldn't count. And ZEC, I withdrew before Kasukwere's case was decided. Mm-hmm. And the law says you cannot print ballot papers before the decision of a case involving a presidential candidate. Kasukwere's case had not been decided. Right. So in what way would ZEC say the ballots have been printed? When did they print them? So my withdrawal actually exposed the lies by the Zimbabwe Election Commission. But I did not participate in this election. Anybody who thinks that they can beat me in this election must come in 2028. That's when the true test is going to come. To judge me by an election I didn't participate in would be unfair, Sean.
But looking at the leadership we spoke of the MDC that is no longer there, we spoke of Senator Komichi, Engineer Muzuri, Nelson Chamisa himself, we can speak of Natenda Ibiti, Washimans of the world. Basically all that leadership has moved out of the party. So right now the MDC, it's mainly you are the only remaining prominent member from back then, besides probably Dr. Mashakada. So it seems the leadership also has moved, and your opponents on the other side in the opposition have said, Masarani Danga is Tagaina Mumbe. So listen, you may have Harvest House, but you have no supporters. And looking at the stats and what has been happening right now, it seems that they may be vindicated in saying so.
They are wrong. And you are wrong as well in characterizing the split that has happened. And if you look at the split that has happened in the MDC in a broader sense, it is not a split, it is an ideological rupture. You have seen people who are either students, activists, academics with no particular ideology, etc. moving on one side. You have seen people with a trade union background. You have seen people with a constitutional movement background remaining within the party. So it has been an ideological rupture. But you know, the movement of these comrades out of the party, rather than weakening the party, in the long run strengthens the party. There are young people who are coming in the MDC, and you will see them. I'm sure you have not heard of Ashley Ongoro, but I can tell you that Ashley Ongoro can take 2 Welshman Ngubes. You have not heard of Alfred Sanyika. Alfred Sanyika can take 2 diabetes. I'm sure again you have not heard of this girl in Masvingo, Liliosa. Liliosa will take on 2 coupes. So the going of these comrades who are aging, by the way, and the coming in of this crop of very, very unique characters is a very good sign for us. And that's why you see I speak with confidence, because I know that MDC is going to surprise people. MDC is a cadreship that is coming in. And this is where part of my skill, I'm a law lecturer. I taught law for 18 years. And that helped me identify talent. So a lot of talent is coming. No other party would have survived what MDC went through. And no other person could have survived what I went through. Daily insults, daily, when everybody colluded, civil society, political parties, some part of ZANU-PF, G40, they all united to try to destroy the MDC. And the MDC right now is standing on its 2 feet. It is staggered, it fell, but it is now on its feet. That is the mark of resilience of a political party. And if you had listened to, if people go back to what was being said about me in 2020, in 2021, in 2022, they wouldn't believe that I would still remain standing. But Sean, here I am. You find it worth your while to interview me. You find it worth your while to hear my opinions. That Zimbabweans find it worth their while to hear our opinions. And some of the civic society organizations that actually issued the statements against me when I took the delimitation case to court are inviting me to seminars to lecture on the delimitation. And some are saying we must close ranks and work together. And in private talk, some are saying Mr. Mwonzora was ahead of his time. And if you look at it properly, yes, I had a message, I did not have an audience. Some people had audiences but did not have a message.
Right.
And that's why you see people are now resorting to lies. There will be an election in June, supervised by SADC. Where is it now? SADC has said it's going to sit in Gaborone. It is going to nullify Mnangagwa's chairmanship. In fact, the chairmanship is going to be moved away from Zimbabwe. And it is not true that South Africa is going to intervene and so on. And guess what the SADC people did? Ramaphosa sent congratulatory message to President Mnangagwa, President Masisi, President Hichilema, President Chakwera, and President Nyusi in Mozambique. Now, they have congratulated this man. And you still go to the people, abuse the fact that you have an audience, and then lie to the people. The lies have short legs, Sean. There is no election in Zimbabwe. SADC is not going to nullify Mnangagwa's presidency. And we know that SADC is going to come to Zimbabwe. We know that Zimbabwe is going to assume the chairmanship of SADC. Why do we lie to our people?
Right, but what does it say about your leadership, right? Because when Morgan Tsvangirai, the late, died, he left basically a nearly united then MDC by him forming the MDC Alliance with previously people who had left. You've got your Welshman Ngubes, your Diabetes, and other parties. They all came together under the banner of MDC Alliance. It was his initiative to bring them back or to come under the big tent, as he put it. But after you assume leadership, that whole structure crumbles, and basically each one forms their own party, and it seems others would have moved away with a lot of people. So in terms of your leadership, what does it say about your leadership? Well,
I remained solid. I remained true to the values. In fact, what happened, Sean, if I may advise you,
yes.
Morgan Tsvangirai did not leave Welshman Ngube, Tendai Biti, and all those people you are talking about in the MDC.
It was the alliance.
He never left them in the MDC. They had not come to the party. What was there was an alliance of those parties with the MDCT. And post the cleavage that happened, the MDC Alliance remained under my leadership. And those political parties remained in the MDC Alliance. PDP remained in the MDC Alliance. Tedabiti left the PDP. Welshman Ngobe's party, the MDC Green, remained in the MDC Alliance. Mandaza was coming to the meetings in the Harvest House. Ndonga remained in the MDC Alliance, and so on and so forth. What moved with Chamisa to the CCC were the individual leaders within those formations. But look, you accuse me, you ask me what it says about my leadership. What does it say about the leadership of where they went? What is there now?
Yeah, it is right? Chaos.
There is chaos, and now what is happening, Sean, if I may tell you, is that there are approaches to me and the MDC to say we should come together. So what has remained is that what I can say about myself is that I went through a storm together with the MDC, steadied the ship. Almost a shipwreck happened, but we steadied the ship. Others overtook us, but they went into a west storm and they are coming to the ship to be rescued.
But last election you had several candidates running for parliament, right? You had 87 that were denied, that you claimed ZEC denied, whereas ZEC said they failed to pay on time. But that aside, you had several that ran for parliament. And if people had faith still in the MDC like they would have had previously, how come not a single one of those that ran won, including no council seat, no parliament, no proportional representation, no senate whatsoever? Well,
first of all, the people of the MDC and the people of Zimbabwe are identified with my move to move out of that election. And therefore, we could not, in terms of the law, ask the parliamentary candidates to withdraw as well. And therefore, each individual candidate remained with a choice of going on or not. But the electorate out there knew that the MDC had withdrawn. So it's unfair on those candidates to say that they should have won, because it's very difficult to win without a presidential candidate. And some MP candidates were being asked, your president has done the correct thing. This delimitation report is bad. Why are you participating? And so on and so forth. So again, you are comparing oranges to bananas. There were parties that went full scale for this election. The MDC is not one of them. I wonder what would have happened to the CCC if Nelson Chamisa had said he is not running. All those candidates would not have won, and so on and so forth. So the withdrawal of the main candidate has a bearing on the performance of the other candidates.
And speaking of the CCC, it's an opposition party and it's a cousin of the MDC. No one can deny that. So in terms of what's going on right now in the CCC, where there are several splits and several factions, much like we saw previously in the MDC, what's your comment on that? What's happening there, and do you feel sort of vindicated in a way that perhaps you saw this coming?
We derive no pleasure in the disintegration of the CCC, and we have played no part in it. We would have wished them to be, as a party in parliament, we would have wished them to be stronger, right, and give ZANU-PF a run for its money. Right. And in fact, I did approach the CCC after their winning to say that we are going to be helping them from outside parliament with the research, with the experience that we had. So we had offered our help to them. Yeah. But we did warn the CCC that participating in the election under these conditions, under this delimitation, will have effects. First of all, the predictions were three. The first one was that the election will be disputed. The election was disputed. The second one was that it will be followed by a tightening of the international isolation of this country. It has happened. And the third one was that the CCC was going to disintegrate after the election. And when I said this, it was not because I was a prophet or anything, but because their candidate selection was affected by the delimitation. Right. And responding to the delimitation, thinking that they had a cure, they then went for this strategic ambiguity, whatever it is called. It was in response of the fact that they were as ignorant as many people about the exact nature of this delimitation. So they were affected by this delimitation, and we did warn them. But they are our brothers and sisters within the opposition. We would like to work with them. We want to have a stronger alliance of the opposition so that we deal with the change agenda. We improve the lives of the people of Zimbabwe. It's not about Mwonzora, it's not about Chamisa, it's not about BT or Welshman. It is about the people of Zimbabwe. But of course, there are certain things that we certainly don't agree with. We don't agree with lying to the people. We don't agree with the name calling. We don't agree with every time you have a dispute with someone, there's ZANU-PF. So when they had dispute with the Douglas Mwonzora, he was dubbed ZANU-PF by Tendai BT and Welshman and even Chabangu. And when Chabangu and Tendai BT disagreed, Tendai BT suddenly ZANU-PF. Welshman is suddenly ZANU-PF, and Chabangu is very ZANU-PF. And now Chabangu, Tendai BT and company and the other CCC are now accusing Chamisa of actually having colluded with President Mnangagwa. And conspiracy theories are flying around. Right. And in all that confusion, one person stands up, one party stands up, and it is the MDC. It was bruised and battered, but it has remained standing. I wonder whether my comrades are going to remain standing in their current state.
What would it take to restore the opposition to perhaps the MDC of, say, 2002, where it was a united party, and it had a solitary structure and support base, and it was very strong and really gave the ruling party a run for its money? Because at the moment, the ruling party has a two-thirds majority in parliament. There is no checks and balances, and basically they're riding roughshod over everything else. So what would it take for the opposition? You work together with Chamisa, with BT, with Welshman, and all those guys for a very long time. What would it take for you to come back again? And I say this because there was a comment when you attended the late Rai's funeral that you were there, Chamisa was there, BT was there, basically everyone was there, Dr. Kupe was there. Why would you probably not say close a room and get inside and speak like colleagues? What would it take, and what is the major problem that is causing you not to be the opposition? That is when I say you.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Sean, it makes sense for people to unite. And the MDC is on record to say that we should unite, we must close rank. In fact, that was the gravamen of my speech at Morisi Rai's funeral. Right. I called for unity of the opposition. But for the opposition to unite, it must de-escalate. This name calling, every time you post a tweet, they are on you, just destroying people's reputation and so on. It must cease. And I wish the leaders in the CCC, all the factions of the CCC, the Nube, the Chabangu, the Timber, and the Blue Movement, the Ostalos one.
Right.
I wish the leaders in those factions would heed to the very, very wise words of Joshua Nkomo to Mugabe one day during Gukuraundi. Right. Nkomo said to Mugabe, don't teach these young people blood. One day they will want yours. Now, if you teach young people hate language and so on, one day they will turn and use that weapon against you. It's all unnecessary. I saw it at Rotten Row. It was very tragic. 78 people are in detention. a bail application has been done, the magistrate is considering the bail application. And Ostalos goes to the steps, starts talking the way he did. He is free, others are in detention. You don't do that, because you then affect the minds of the judges, the minds of the magistrate. That can only be done by a person who wants people to stay in prison. And it is only some of us who see through this. It is wrong. It is the same as they did during Job Scholars incarceration, where they were encouraging his incarceration. I remember somebody even tweeted to say what Job Scholar had said and done does not represent them. They threw him under the bus. And the 78, Timber and Company are being thrown under the bus. You don't hold a semi-rally when a bail application is pending. That is basic, and the lawyers who had those political parties should know this. When the magistrate is still deciding, you don't do anything. It's only when they decide that you react. Because if you do as they did, remember there are other forces in this country as well. They will go bearing on the magistrate to say, oh, did you see after you adjourned, did you see this clip? And the magistrate sees it, and it looks like undue influence. It was very immature. So, for the opposition to come together, we must do away with immaturity. We must resort to constitutionalism. We must resort to mutual respect. We must listen to one another, Sean. And this is critical, because the conversation of the political parties right now in opposition is a conversation of the deaf. Right. No one listens to the other. So we must listen to one another. Right now, the CCC is holding on the properties of the MDC. We are having to go to court to get our properties back. We want Blawayo back.
Yes, I was about to get into that as well.
We shouldn't go through that. And I met them, I wrote to Chamisa to say, advocate, please bring back the properties. It's not necessary for us to continue fighting about this. I talked to Dr. Advocate Pulu, Chabangu, and through them to Professor Mwonzora. We don't have to fight about this. These properties were begotten by the MDC as far back, the latest property was in 2011.
Right.
And your party is formed in 2022. Please give the property back, and they don't. They have to give the property back, justice has to be done, and then we have to then sit down and plot the way forward. Without respect, with this incessant name calling, with this selfishness, there will be doom for the opposition. Fortunately, in the MDC, we have moved on. We don't resort to hate language. We are very, very clear about the respect of other political parties, including even ZANU-PF. We differ with them, but we differ with respect, right. And we differ on issues.
Yes, I was about to go into your recent victories where you won your properties back, was it in Blawayo, against the CCC. Yes, and it seems all your fights always end up in courts, and whenever you're fighting, again, people have the assumption that the courts help you because you seem to always win against the other, your erstwhile colleagues. But nonetheless, moving on.
Well, sure, that's a very fundamental issue.
Right.
What is what is the other option when people have invaded your property and they have put thugs in that property? What should I do? Organize my own thugs, fight black on black, young men on young men? I'm not going to set, to quote Mugabe, I'm not going to set a black young man who is suffering against another black young man who is suffering. Because the young men that were put in at number 40 Street in Bulawayo were young people from Makokoba, unemployed, from Jube, and so on and so forth, Makandeni. They are put there to fight whoever comes. Right. And if I had also then brought young people from Zilikazi, young people from Nketa, young people from Lobengula, to say Luveve, go and take those offices, it would have resulted in an unnecessary bloodbath. So we chose the peaceful way. The peaceful way is we go to court,
right,
and it's adjudicated upon, and as you can see, no life was lost, nobody was injured.
Do you have any regrets in terms of the current political status of the opposition, as it were, with the MDC, CCC, and many others? Do you think things could have been done differently? And if you were to redo it again, would you follow the same path that you followed, resulting in what we currently see in the opposition?
I think what happened was necessary, Sean. And now, right now, the opposition is in a situation where the situation is mutually hurting. When a situation is mutually hurting, it forces people to be rational. Right now, some people thought they could go it alone, win, and so on and so forth without others. It has not happened that way. I don't think Walshman will win on his own. I think Tendai will win on his own. I don't think Chamisa will win on his own. I don't think I can win without the help of other comrades. So the situation is mutually hurting. It was a necessary political phase.
Right.
But more importantly, it answers the situation that is there now. Has answered a serious question. The serious question is who was destroying the opposition. And I think right now Zimbabweans are having a conversation about that. But as the MDC, we regret the fact that people had to fight in that manner, that we ended up having to recall one another from parliament, from council, and so on. It's always a painful exercise. If people go back in history, I don't think it will happen again. I don't think that Advocate Ngube, Tendai Biti, Advocate Chamisa, Advocate Mafume, Advocate Pulu will again, if faced with the same situation, will again write affidavits on behalf of the MPs to say we are no longer members of the MDC. Because those were the affidavits that caused us to recall people from parliament. To say, Mr. Speaker, look at their affidavit. They are no longer members of our party. And you don't say I'm recalling them. You say they are no longer members of our party. Right. And when you say that, the speaker then says in terms of section 129K, when they cease to belong to this party, then they are no longer members of parliament.
Right, Mr. Mwonzora, so some commentators and people in the opposition say, had you won against Charlton Hwende at the MDC Alliance, was MDCT Congress in Gweru, you would not have turned on the party after the Supreme Court judgment, where you then basically refused to acknowledge that Congress and say it was illegal. What do you say about that?
First of all, it's not me who refused to acknowledge that Congress. It was the Supreme Court. And let me explain to you there, Sean, for the benefit of our viewers. The person who took the matter to court, to the High Court, was not me. I was one of the people who were being sued, along with Advocate Chamisa. I was respondent number 3. The person who took us to court was Elias Mashawira, organizing secretary of Gogwe Sasame district. And when he won the High Court case, I, as Secretary General, went to Chamisa to say, this case, we can't win it. Let's just call for an ordinary Congress. And you regularize your position. Chamisa refused. He was being helped by Tabani Mpofu and the other company, Tendai Biti, and even Walshman Ngube. They then asked the Chamisa to appeal to the Supreme Court. So the person who went to the Supreme Court was Advocate Chamisa. And he lost at the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said, and I made no argument in the Supreme Court. In fact, the matter was withdrawn against me at the Supreme Court by Walshman Ngube, by Tabani Mpofu, on the advice of Walshman Ngube. And Advocate Chamisa lost his case in the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court then said MDC must go back to its structures of 2014 and go back to its constitution, hold an extraordinary Congress, regularize. I was of the opinion that this was the highest court of the land and that we must follow what the court has said. And I made no secret about it. Advocate Chamisa, and under the advice of Tendai BT, Walshman Ngube, and the other guys who are fighting with him now, then said, we do not care what the courts say. We are going to go it alone, the sovereignty and so on. They made a lot of political arguments. I chose to follow what the courts had said. By the way, this was not a court judgment of ZANU-PF versus MDC. It was a court judgment of MDC versus MDC. Two of my cadres in the same party were fighting. And one was pronounced correct by the courts. And I chose to follow the courts. And right now, we have been vindicated, you know, that failure to go to Congress, failure to follow our rules, failure to follow the Constitution leads to fatal consequences. And a party like CCC finds itself in a serious conundrum because of that. That's what I wanted to avert as far back as 2020.
But let's go into the issue of the third term. There's been talk a lot about ZANU-PF possibly wanting the President Mnangagwa, to extend his term of office either to 2030 or perhaps beyond. You were a critical member of writing the current constitution in 2013 when we passed it. What does the constitution say about a third term for an incumbent president, and also what would it take for the president to actually extend his term of office, if it were possible by law?
What is very clear, Sean, is that there are elements within ZANU-PF who want the president to carry on for a third term. And what is clear, what I do know, is that there is debate among some lawyers within ZANU-PF, and some are saying now, instead of having a third term of 5 years, let's extend the current 5-year term to say it's now 7 years. That's why you see there is an addition of 2 years after 2028.
Right.
And if you add those 2 years, you are getting to 2030.
Right.
And that's why you are seeing this slogan. It started in Masvingo, and then it has gone to other parts of the country. And very high officials within ZANU-PF are saying that slogan, meaning that in 2030, President Mnangagwa will still be the president. So there is no question that within ZANU-PF there are people pushing that agenda. There is also no question that there is no determined resistance from the president. There is no serious resistance from the president himself. Because had there been that, the president should have, in unambiguous terms, have followed, have denounced that and banned that slogan.
Right.
Now, in terms of the Constitution, for you to amend the term of office, the Constitution says you do it using the procedure used to amend the Bill of Rights.
Right.
And for you to amend the Bill of Rights, you go for referendum. And then in section 328(7), I think, if I'm not mistaken, it then says, even if you win at a referendum, and the term of office is extended, that extension shall not benefit the incumbent. I should confess that when we wrote this constitution, we had Mugabe in mind. We did not believe that Mugabe would respect the term limits we had set in the constitution. So we tried to put in a few safeguards. But we were also very worried about the clause not selling through. That's why you see the clause is at the end of the constitution, where it is almost inconspicuous. It's now conspicuous because things are now happening now. Right. So in order, the procedure is like this. Parliament has to vote for a motion to say we are voting for this bill, this proposed bill. So it has to vote by 2/3. Number two, the speaker has to give 90 days notice to the people of Zimbabwe that an outreach is going to be done. Number three, after all that, after popularizing, telling the people of Zimbabwe of all what that amendment is all about, the president has to proclaim a referendum. And the people of Zimbabwe have to vote in the referendum, yes, no. If they vote yes, and the amendment is done, because the referendum question is not going to be, do you want Mnangagwa to go for the third term? No. It's going to be, do you want the presidential term to be extended? Right? So if the referendum question is answered yes, by answering yes in the referendum question, I mean voting yes. And the extension, that will come back to Parliament. Parliament still have to vote by 2/3 majority. And if they extend, the extension does not benefit the incumbent, does not benefit the current president. The only president who will benefit from that is the next president. So we did that to disincentivize the sitting presidents from extending terms, because it won't benefit you, it will benefit your successor. And I see no reason why the president would want to do that.
So is there any difficulty in the current parliament voting to remove that particular clause that requires a referendum? Can they just amend that particular clause and then extend without the need for a referendum?
Just like they can't amend by 2/3 majority in Parliament, even by 100% in Parliament, they cannot amend the Bill of Rights. For that reason, they cannot amend a clause that gives term limits, especially for the president, without going to referendum. So the referendum is unavoidable. The people of Zimbabwe have to vote yes to say we now want to extend the term of office. At any rate, Sean, why is it necessary? What is so special about this president that Zimbabwe cannot do without him? As far as we can see, his performance has not been that outstanding. Remember, this is a president who has been in government since 1980, holding key positions in cabinet. There is nothing special, if I may say, that we can say he has done, justifying him to stay. If you go to Rwanda, they can tell you that Kagame did this, stopped the civil war, blah, 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 and so on. But there is nothing that this president has done which cannot be carried over or carried on by another person. And it just puts Zimbabwe in an awkward position internationally. Other countries are following their term limits and so on and so forth. Why Zimbabwe? Why extend in Zimbabwe? But this is an African phenomenon. We saw Abdoulaye Wade in Senegal try to extend his term limit. The people refused. We saw Chiluba in Zambia wanted to do the same, and I think there was another president also who wanted to do that. People do not want that. I think, to be fair, President Mnangagwa would have saved more than 2 terms anyway, because he completed President Mugabe's term, then he took over his own term, 5 years. Zimbabweans have given him another 5 years to make about 11 years. And what can you do after 11 years that you could not do within 11 years? So I don't think that it is wise, and I think Zimbabweans must totally reject that. And as the MDC, we have made our stance very, very clear to say that we are opposed to this extension of term. Now the debate by their lawyers is that changing the term from 5 years to 7 years is not extending the term. It is simply moving the current term, adding to the current term. Again, that is wrong, because when we interpret law as the lawyers, we have a number of rules. But the first rule is the literal rule. What do the words mean? What is their grammatical meaning? The words used in the act. And it says extension of term. Extension of term, it doesn't define how. So if you extend it by pulling its elasticity, which is what they are trying to do, it is still an extension. It's objectionable, and the Zimbabweans must refuse.
Right. And looking at the economy currently, what's your standpoint as the MDC as to what is currently prevailing in the economy? We have a new currency that just came in, the ZiG. What's your position on that?
The economy is bad as far as the common man is concerned. We have unemployment. We have a capital flight in this country. No meaningful investors are coming. They are investing in Zambia, Botswana, Malawi, Mozambique even. We have poor service delivery. We have 500,000 students who are out of school because they cannot afford it. So whatever the economic benefits or growth that they are talking about it is not benefiting the people. There is massive corruption. Right now we are having this GoatGate. We are hearing ZGate and so on and so forth, involving people who are connected to the high echelons of power. So this economy is doing badly. The ZIG is non-existent, practically speaking, because it's not in circulation. Zimbabweans do not have access to it. I have been hunting for it, and I only got hold of a 10 ZIG note. I haven't been able to touch any other note, except of course as electronic. So this currency is not there. It is kept out, and its value is being sustained by scarcity, not by its strength. So this currency is not there, but we think that this government has no new ideas to change this country. For example, the country has remained internationally isolated, and as the MDC, what we had said is that we must democratize our institutions so that we are not internationally isolated. If we are not internationally isolated, if sanctions are removed, then Zimbabwe has access to international market. Right. They will have access to international credit. Right. And if you have access to international market and international credit, then you can develop. Right now, Zimbabwe is still under sanctions. Zidera says that any American who is in institutions which give money, the IMF, World Bank, the African Development Bank, must always vote against Zimbabwe. And we know that Americans basically hate those institutions, and that law remains. And they have said, in order for us to remove that, you must democratize your institution. You must have a free and fair election. That was one of my arguments during delimitation, to say this delimitation will lead to international isolation. Zimbabwe has tried to apply for the Commonwealth. The application has basically been rejected or delayed for the main reason that Zimbabwe's electoral system is bad. And because we are not in the Commonwealth, we cannot have access to the Commonwealth markets and to the Commonwealth grants, scholarships for our students, even games for our athletes. We do not have that. The economy is doing very, very badly. There is no money in this economy. The people are suffering. The prices are going up. There is no money to talk about. The money that is there is the United States dollar.
Let's talk about the MDC economic policy, because I think that's where the main challenge with many opposition parties comes in, that it doesn't seem that there is a real alternative economic policy that is put forward to counter ZANU-PF's, the ruling party's economic policies. What is the MDC's fundamental economic policy, besides saying we'll create jobs, we'll bring in investments, we'll do, how exactly are you going to create jobs? How exactly are you going to bring in investments, besides just by being elected into office? What's your industrialization policy?
Well, MDC's economic policy is centered around its ideology. The MDC is a social democratic party. Right. In other words, we believe in a welfare state. We believe in an inclusive economy. So the very first thing that we must do in order to make sure that this economy develops is to include everyone in this economy, to include the youth, the women, and the previously disadvantaged people. And that's why we said in our manifesto, as we were going to this election, that we will provide interest-free loans to the youth of this country so that they start small businesses. All these countries you see, the United States, Japan, and so on, they have developed on the basis of small and to medium enterprises, right. not on the back of big multinational companies. No, it's a small to medium enterprises. So you encourage small to medium enterprises by making sure that the young people in this country, because they are educated, the young people of this country have access to credit. That's why we were advocating for interest-free loans. Right. And that their businesses must be incubated. There must be incubation facilities where the businesses are managed for them. With just like you have extended services in agriculture, you have people who come supervise their businesses and help them. We also advocated for interest-free loans for women and so on. And we said that as part of growing the economy, we must realize what each region of this country is good for. Matabeleland is good for cattle, mostly, when it comes to agriculture. Yes, there's fisheries in the Zambezi, but when it comes to agriculture, it's livestock in Matabeleland. And then for the young people again, for the people in Matabeleland and the young people in particular, you must then give a loan in form of heifers, in form of goats, and so on. And these loans you give them for 5 years, together with the inputs, the chemicals, and so on. A compulsory dipping and compulsory way of dealing with livestock. And they are then asked to return the 10 heifers after 5 years. There you are including people within the economy. So without inclusion in the economy, you have people who are making money as a result of tenders. Most of the people who are flexing a lot of financial muscle do not produce anything in this country. But they get a lot of money because they do the tenders and so on and so forth. The other way is if we democratize, we then remove Zimbabwe from international isolation. You remove all the policies that deter the coming in of investors. Investors won't come into your country if your country has what economists call a high country risk factor. All these things like arresting people for demonstrating, arresting people for gathering for meetings, increase the country risk factor. So we need to be integrated into the international economy. We need to make sure that the poor people are included in the economy. Now, Zimbabweans have shown a lot of resilience in agriculture. If you go to Mbaremsika, Magaba, there is quite a lot of production going on, but they simply do not have capital. We will make sure that they will have capital. So after that, we don't end at production. We end at distribution of the national cake. And that's why we will implement devolution. We will make sure that resources that are begotten in a region benefit
the locals,
the people in that region. For example, we have Chiadwa and Manicaland, but it is surrounded by some of the poorest people on earth. Then you have the Zambezi River. And the Tonga people in the Zambezi Basin are regarded as poachers. They do not even have legal access to the river and to what is in their river. We have people in Lupane where there are huge deposits of gas. We hope that locals are going to be employed there so that we stop this movement into South Africa that has afflicted most of Matabeleland. Right. Most young people, as soon as he's able to fend for himself, he crosses the Limpopo. And we have some of our finest young people there. One of the ways of improving the economy, Sean, is sport itself. We must accept that there are countries like Jamaica, for example, that makes a lot of money from its athletes. That makes a lot of money from its artists, the reggae artists in the world. They bring a lot of money. Yes. And then lastly, just in summary, the issue of the diaspora. Diaspora must be encouraged to bring remittances to Zimbabwe. And Zimbabwe already, in terms of the constitution, has a dual citizenship. But you cannot have responsibility without rights.
Yeah.
So the people in the diaspora have a responsibility of fending for people in Zimbabwe, but they don't have rights, the right to vote. So we have to bring the diaspora vote so that we encourage the people in the diaspora to come and invest in our country. There are other ways of attracting investment. I think there is an advert that is going on on the internet right now about a place called Dominica. And they are saying you can have citizenship by investment.
Right.
So you must come with 100,000 United States dollars and invest it. But if you want to go into real estate to own land, you must come with at least 200,000. Then you have the rights of citizenship. We must consider that. We must consider marketing our own natural resources. It is very disheartening to note that South African Airways advertises Victoria Falls to its customers. And Zimbabweans don't seem to be doing a good job. If you go to Geneva right now, to the United States, to United Nations headquarters in Geneva, you will see Singapore advertising itself. We are not doing that. And then lastly, there are some development grants that are there that Zimbabwe is not applying for. When I went with the committee, with the speaker to Brussels last year, to the European Union, we learned that there is 150 billion that has been set aside for gateway roads. Gateway roads are roads that come through your country but link you from one country to another. And you see how many we have in Zimbabwe. If you count, almost every road here is a gateway road. And there are grants, not loans, that are being provided by the European Union. And as near as last year, Zimbabwe had not even cared to apply for those development grants. So a good infrastructure will generate a lot of income in this country.
Perfect. Getting back to politics, you are a member of NERA. I'm not sure if it's the National Electoral Reform Agenda.
Yes.
Yes. Who is NERA? What does NERA do? And why NERA?
NERA is a group of political parties and civil society organizations who have come together to advocate for electoral reforms in this country. It comes as a realization that as far as we can remember, right from independence, Zimbabwean elections have always been disputed. Yes. The 1980 elections were disputed. 85 disputed on account of violence, mostly against ZAPU. The 1990 elections disputed the shooting of Patrick Kombai. 1995 elections disputed. In fact, in the 1995 elections, at the age of 25, I tried to stop them in the Supreme Court. Representing Reverend Dabaningi Stole and Bishop Mzorewa, yes. To say the Electoral Act is not fair. Of course, I lost. 2000 elections disputed. 2002 West. 1995 election. 2005 elections disputed. The West. 2008. All that bloodletting. 2013. We are talking of Nikov. 18 again disputed. 2023 disputed. So if we have disputed elections, it will be very difficult. So the NERA has come together to have electoral reforms in a concrete way. When we say we want electoral reforms, what do we mean? For example, we want the diaspora vote. We are not ending there. We are providing a solution of how you make the diaspora vote safe. We are talking about reforming ZEC. Right now, ZEC is not that body you see headed by Chigumba or Makarau. That's not the most important part of ZEC. The most important part of ZEC is the secretariat and the subcommittees. So the subcommittees like the logistics subcommittee, the accreditation subcommittee, etc., are populated by people from the executive. Right. So you see people from the President's office, Minister of Justice, people from state security, people from Minister of Home Affairs, they are in the logistics committee. You even get people from local government in the logistics committee and so on and so forth. So ZEC is not independent. So we want, in a friendly, dialoguing manner, to bring electoral reforms so that we don't have elections where there are disputes.
Right. But the ruling party is on a record, at least some officials within the ruling party, saying the party cannot reform itself out of power. So any reforms that threaten its hold on power may likely not pass. So how then are you going to go beyond that hurdle? How would you possibly force ZANU-PF to reform the electoral process?
The purpose of NERA, the purpose of electoral reform is not to get anyone into power or out of power. It is to help Zimbabweans express themselves the way they want.
Right.
So with reforms, you can have the people voting for ZANU-PF. So be it. You can have people voting for the opposition. So be it. But you must even the playing field. It benefits the losers. It benefits mostly the winners.
Right.
And because they are able to say to the international community, we are a legitimate government. Right now, there is a legitimacy question hovering or above the head of President Mnangagwa and his ZANU-PF. We don't require that after elections. After elections, the party that has been given mandate must be given opportunity to then fulfill its mandate. But you have a situation where the country then gets internationally isolated on the basis of the opaqueness of its electoral system.
If I may put you on the spot right here and say, last year's elections, you didn't participate officially, although we had your name on paper because ZEC refused to remove you. But who do you say, or who do you think, as an independent person, won the election? Do you think President Mnangagwa really won, or do you think Advocate Chamisa won? Or are you not comfortable in delving into
I'm very comfortable in answering it, and the answer is I don't know.
Right.
I do not know who won the election because I was not interested in it because it was a farce. Advocate Chamisa says he won the election, but he has not proven to anyone that he won the election. He had told us that he had the V11s, he was going to take to the Constitutional Court and he proved that he won the election. In the absence of that proof, then it's one of those things that people just claim. But it's up to those people who participated in that election to know exactly what it was like. Because had I been there, had I had my polling agents, I would have told you that from the figures we have, we won or we lost. Just like we were able to do in 2008. We were able to do this election and so on. Because we had the figures to back it, the evidence to back it. But I don't know. I mean, besides the official figures we get, and these official figures shown are undisputed by the main contender himself.
And there is talk that you did not participate in the last elections, and yet you had benefited from political party finances. So it may seem to the ordinary person that since you had members of parliament in parliament and you benefited from the monies from parliament, you squandered, or perhaps you converted all that money to your personal use and there was no campaigning, and so you benefited financially from it. What do you say about that?
Well, let's go to the history of the Political Parties Finances Act. The person who went to court to fight that act in 1997 was myself in the Supreme Court. I won that case in the Supreme Court, and that is why parties in Parliament are then entitled to a pro rata share of the political parties fund. And the political parties fund is used for party administration. It's not used for campaigning. That's not the purpose of political parties fund. If you see yourself taking the political parties fund and flying your president to Bulawayo to conduct a rally, you are actually abusing it. The political parties fund is for party administration. That is why there is talk that there must be an accounting officer. Right. And the accounting officer normally is the Secretary General. We did not participate in the election, not because we had no money. That was not the reason. We did not participate in this election because it was stupid to participate in that election. It was, as I said before, an act of foolish bravery to do that. There was a delimitation report that was clearly going to lead to one result and one result only. We did not want to sanitize that. There was the issue of ZEC. There were many issues that were there. The president of this, the government of Zimbabwe changed the electoral law during an election, during campaigning, which is not allowed by the constitution. Right. We saw through this and we said we are not participating. Others saw otherwise, they participated. And where are they? What have they changed for the Zimbabwean people? So we refused as the MDC to participate in wasting money, wasting people's resources, playing with people's emotions, well knowing what the results would be. So these accusations just come from haters, you know. And as I always say, Sean, there is nothing good that Mwonzora does. If Mwonzora passed O-level, he must have been helped by some teacher down there. If he passed the A-level, if he was on top of his class at law school, he must have been favored by the lecturers. If he won the Political Parties Finances Act, he must have been favored by the judges under Robert Mugabe. And by the way, it is Robert Mugabe's regime that arrested me on 34 occasions. And so on and so forth. So we did not participate, and I want to repeat this, we did not participate in this election on the basis, not on the basis of finance. Everybody, there were poorer people than us, poorer political parties than us who participated in this election. Our 87 of our MPs, candidates were disqualified unfairly by ZEC because it was punishing us for having embarrassed it during the delimitation fight. And the courts were complicit against us. We were the only party that stood up, Sean, to fight the injustice, to fight for what was unfair. And people may make their explanations, but history has proven us correct. We wouldn't be at this in this situation, Sean, had everybody heeded the call of the MDC to move out of the election that was basically a shame. Morgan Tsvangirai did it in 2008. In that runoff election, he said, there's too much bloodletting. This is going to be a farce. I am having nothing to do with it. And other countries came in and then said, you must have a government of national unity because there has not been an election in Zimbabwe. But this was spoiled by the CCC now. That they went into the election, they told people that they were going to, they had mechanisms against